So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, Staten Island, and welcome to the 128th Al Lambert Show. I don't really know if that's true, but we've been doing this for quite some time. And the Al Lambert Show was always dedicated to the memory of my parents, Dom and Jane, and my dad specifically because he had a show here for 8 or 9 years from the late 80s to the mid to late 90s. And that's how I got my taste for this. The show is dedicated to people who help people. And it's also dedicated to live music, being a live musician. But it has morphed to where we've gone to other things, like writers and actors and entertainers, but people who help people is the premise. There's enough negative news, and so I just figured we fill the airtime with nice things. And I have two very nice people with me. I'm going to introduce them and see if I get this right.
Okay, you say Buglioli.
Right, Buglioli.
Or if the rest of America would say Buglioli.
All right.
And I answer to both.
Yeah? You answer to both, okay. And you are the deputy director of a very special place.
That's true. The deputy executive director.
Deputy executive director.
Because they shot the sheriff, but they never shot the deputy. I just want to say.
And Jackie Rumolo, you are the executive director of New York State Institute on Disability Incorporated?
Yes.
Okay. But what really brings the three of us here is something we're going to talk about, the Willowbrook State School, past and present. And we all actually worked at Willowbrook. Now let's talk about our Willowbrook moment and the times that can we start with a little of that? When did you start?
May 29th, 1969. 1969 was a pretty powerful year.
Wow.
Right? 1969. Yeah. So many things happened in 69. The Mets won the World Series in 1969.
The moon.
Yeah,
the moon. We walked on the moon in 1969.
I'm having my show in Red Bank called Fly Me to the Moon to celebrate the 50 years of the moon.
Perfect. Yeah. Press Woodstock.
Yeah. Woodstock was in 1969 as well.
Yeah, that was a fabulous year.
Yeah.
You know, the end of the 60s.
Yeah. They're doing that TV series on 1969.
Really?
I saw it. It's very good.
It is. It's great.
Very good.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that.
A lot of things that probably you didn't
ABC.
know before. They're picking up and showing.
Yeah, when did you go?
Started
Willowbrook?
Not till 1974.
Oh, you saw you just as I was leaving. I was with you for a while, and then I was gone city. That's so funny. But I used to hang around Willowbrook anyway. Like I hung around 10 years after I left.
Yeah, that's how I knew you so well.
I was always there because I was at Toyota down the street, you know, and
everybody was buying Toyotas.
Everybody was buying Toyotas, but I was friends with everybody.
you know, are.
And so I would come back for lunch and we'd all meet, and you know, it was like college at that time for us, you know. Right?
And you would meet at Schaefer's.
We meet at Schaefer's and all the other.
Get bratwurst on Friday.
Oh my God!
Oh my God! Schaefer's was quite a place. It's gone.
I know.
It's gone.
It's been gone now a couple of years.
Yeah, Al's Pizzeria was across the street.
Yeah.
Right?
I went to grammar school with Al. Went to St. John's Villa. He was in St. John's Villa. That's Al Iannacone opened that up.
Oh, okay.
And he was in St. John's.
It's actually 6 degrees from Al Lambert.
Yeah.
Here on the island.
I'm very blessed. I say that all the time. So, Diane, let's talk a little bit about why we decided to be on this show here today. I'm going to get you started, and then Jackie's going to talk a little too.
Well, as you said, first of all, we have this
and don't
bond.
be worried about time.
Yeah.
Take whatever time.
You're talking about the bond that we all had.
Right.
Because we experienced this moment together, which was this institution called Willowbrook State School. And like Jackie, I spent my entire career in this field. And although that was not the plan was I was going to be a singer-songwriter. And I moved out of my house, and I realized that I had to pay rent.
Right.
So there was a job at Willowbrook State School. I had no experience, and I started there in 1969 to just pay my rent. I worked initially with children in the baby unit. I was in building 26. And I was so, I believe, just impacted by what was around me, that I often say I've been abducted by these kids, and they changed my life totally into what I wanted to do. And I stayed at Willowbrook until 1980. So I was there 11 years. And when I left Willowbrook, it was because Genevieve Benoit and I were opening a very special place here on Staten Island.
Right.
So what was the cool thing about it was that we took with us people that we were working with at Willowbrook.
Yeah,
that was
cool.
a really nice
That really
feeling,
was
and it was a
cool.
cool thing.
That was cool.
So I become involved. The council is also 50 years old. The Staten Island
Yes.
Developmental Disabilities Council is also 50 years old, and started in 1969. And that's how we opened the agency, by applying there and advocating for services for adults at that time, because there were no adult services. And remember, in this time, they had just opened up the rights for people and kids with disabilities to go to school. Prior to 1974, they would just tell a parent, your child is ineducable was the term.
Public Law 94-142.
Came in 1974. Before then, they just would not accept your child. So things were changing, right? And then comes the expose at Willowbrook, and Jen and I start working on this program. And we go through the council. So we become active members of the council. Jackie was...
Both past chairs.
I'm a past chair, Jen is a past chair, and Jackie's a past chair. And the interesting connection between Jackie and I was that I always had this very strong connection with Willowbrook, and Jackie was the president, was the chairperson of the council at a time when the commissioner, I mean, you can tell that story, Jackie, about the commissioner was interested with doing something with the properties. You can tell the story better than I.
Commissioner Maul, Tom Maul, at the at the time, he was really interested in hearing what the people who use the services had to say, and the people who still work there on the property. He was concerned about the future of the Elizabeth Connolly Resource Center too. Besides the other pieces of property, and the Institute for Basic Research also.
Yes.
And what was happening too was, things were changing, and the College of Staten Island was expanding, and they were looking for places to do different things and to, expand. And so there was talk of, using the property for that. But Commissioner Maul gave us the task of coming together and trying to bring all the parties together, most importantly, people with developmental disabilities, to know what they wanted to do with the property.
Right, so then we started to have meetings.
Yeah, we formed the Willowbrook Property Planning Committee.
Yeah, so we had meetings, we had forums, we started to do surveys, and we wanted to do some additional services there, maybe a sleepaway camp, because so many of the kids were being sent to upstate New York or New Jersey.
Oh, we wanted also the Center for Excellence.
We wanted a Center for Excellence.
We wanted to create a Center for Excellence where people could go and
to learn
get
more.
resources and just work and learn things about.
Right. So we had this major plan to do that. And then as we started to work with some landscape architects, we found out that so much of the property really wouldn't be usable for those purposes. So then we had over the years, and we've been doing this since 2007, we started to say, well, maybe before 2007, right? We started to say, well, what is it that we really want to accomplish? And it really distilled down to this point that we wanted something on the property that would show this progress that was made since the opening of the property, but also what happened on the property so that it wouldn't happen again. There's this really important thing about, the concept of history, and that you must learn from it to proceed. That
and to document that this was a human rights movement.
Yeah, that
no, you're right.
A pretty successful one to date. It still has more work to do. So we started to work on that, and we said, well, how can we do that? What do we want to set up? One of the things was that we'd have some sort of a museum or an archives, but we said, what can we do in the interim? Because that's millions and millions of dollars. We knew that. So we talked about a walking trail. And we said, we'll do
in
a walking
trail
for
not
a
riding for horses, but for wheelchairs.
For wheelchairs, or people on walkers, to make sure it's accessible, right? And that there be stations along the way that would tell people the story of Willowbrook and the property. So we came up with the concept of 10 stations, and we were talking about it. And we happened to have a meeting with Michael Kress, who was the then vice president of the college. And he said, we're doing a walking fitness trail. Maybe we should merge the idea. We said, this is perfect, right? So we started to work on that. Tomas Morales was the president of the college then.
Very supportive guy.
I remember him.
Yeah, he was very supportive, nice
he was
man.
Really,
community
he was
minded.
a people person.
He was a nice man. I was on the
really
board
was.
of at the psych center.
Which one?
Oh, South Beach Psychiatric Center?
Yeah, there was a. Oh my God! Now it's ICU. They bought Staten Island Behavioral Network. I was on that board, and Thomas was on that board with me.
Jim Thomas?
No, Thomas.
Thomas Morales.
Oh, Thomas Morales.
That's how I got to
Thomas
meet him.
Morales,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Tomas. They called him.
Yes.
Really liked him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then when
Nice guy.
Thomas leaves, Bill Fritz comes in. And he's the guy who really makes it happen as the president. He puts so much into it because he says there's a legacy to this property, and we have to identify it. So now there's a disability curriculum at the college. There's special accommodations for people with disabilities at the college. There's the program through AHRC at the college for people that have college experience.
Melissa Riggio
program. So he really made this happen, and he really embraced the mile.
And people actually work there too.
Yeah, that have
People with
disabilities.
developmental disabilities.
So,
Great.
so the mile is this. It's very very interesting. It starts with the story of the baby unit, right, and the children that went there. The baby unit was actually opened in the 1960s, but Willowbrook, for people who don't know the history of it, it was set up as it was meant to be a good thing. The state was trying to do a good thing.
Originally.
In the 1930s, they commissioned through the legislative that they would open this state school to help people that at that time they were called mental defectives. That's the terminology from years ago. So crass and cruel in a way.
Terrible.
And so they said, okay, we're going to do that. And then they start to build it. They build it. And what happens? World War II happens. So now they're not opened yet, and they said we're going to use this as a military hospital. So Halloran Hospital opens,
Right.
and that's a fascinating
remember that,
place.
yeah.
Halloran Hospital was run by a commander, and he made it this campus that embraced the soldiers to give and to motivate them, and he had POWs there. They had German and Italian POWs there, Al.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Now listen to this, Al.
Wow.
They would allow the Italian POWs to go to Jewett Avenue to get pizza, but they wouldn't let the Germans off campus.
Jesus, my God!
It's such an interesting story. It's in the archives.
I didn't know
And
that at all.
but
No,
they actually have letters from the POWs saying, that they were so thankful and how they were treated and stuff. This guy he was just an incredible commander. So Halloran Hospital was the largest military hospital in the United States, and I forget how many. They're really well renowned for their orthopedic surgery. After the war, so they were a fantastic hospital, and there's a lot of people with histories there. In fact,
My cousin got married. He married his wife. She was a nurse there, and he was a
told me
soldier
that,
there.
and he was a soldier
Wow.
there. Yeah, and our YouTube that CTV did the Willowbrook Revisited series, and they put it up on YouTube. Well, we get a call from a German professor who's over here doing a tour of some of the colleges. His father was a POW here, and he comes he walks the mile with us. He comes, he tells us the story of his father. It was so interesting. So one of the stations is about Halloran Hospital, and we're hoping to get the vets involved in it to really put, to really tell that story of Halloran Hospital. It's
Such a
pretty
vast
interesting.
How many
Story.
have you
my God.
identified? You've identified a lot of people? Or?
Well, we have a handful, but once you can start to talk to the handful, it becomes
Yes.
larger. But we're all an endangered species, which is why we want to get together
You're right.
to do
We're an
where we're
endangered
heading. We're an
species of
endangered
everything.
species, right? So, and then we do a whole section on the expose,
Right.
with Geraldo Rivera. But first comes Jane Curtin with the Staten Island Abbey.
Yes, I remember
First
that.
story with
Yeah.
Jane Curtin, right? Then we do something on the judgment. We do something about Building 19, where we talk about what institutionalization was really like. I worked in the outbuildings for a while, aside from the baby unit. I worked in 27 and 21.
I worked in 29.
Right. So there you have buildings that were designed for maybe, 75 to 80 people, and there's almost 200 people living in
I
them.
was in almost every building.
Right.
Right,
And
right.
open wards.
So, no privacy, not a single
No personal
place
space
for
at
personal
all.
space at all.
Just want to comment.
Go ahead.
Right there. But remember
Sure.
where you are, because you're right in the middle of the story. But if I don't
Right.
say this, I won't remember.
Go ahead.
When I did the chorus, the Willowbrook chorus, that you
Yeah, I
remember.
remember. We all remember that.
Great
I actually auditioned 800 kids. I got her permission, and I found 55 kids that had relative or perfect pitch.
Yeah.
And I put them in that as you know, and it was 3 and 4 part harmony. Unheard of.
I know.
Never knew that was going to happen, but it did.
It did.
I almost sold it to Warner Brothers. And I was 8 weeks in communication. I wrote a story, a treatment, a movie treatment about it. And it's an amazing treatment. But I was a little upset at Geraldo at that time because he was told that this was going on. And a lot of us had our personal lives there. We were teaching there. We really loved the kids. And so the story was a little incomplete in the sense that you were good, you were great. And you did, and me and Richie, and we made the kids laugh, and we gave them whatever 6 hours we had, 2.5, 3 in the morning, 2.5. I thought that we treated them really well. We fell in love with those kids. I brought busloads home to my house in Mariners Harbor. We had the yard, we did barbecues and hot dogs. So there was a little more to what went on. But I think that Dr. Hammond got railroaded because they kept throwing kids there. They had no other place to put them. And that poor guy was crying for help. He my take. This is my take. He was trying to get
enough funding.
Not enough funding, not enough help. He was telling them I can't handle anymore. And they didn't really care. They kept throwing it there. And that was part of the problem.
That's why there were people there.
Anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
Did not have developmental disabilities.
They were environmentally
absolutely. There were financial deficits in a family.
Absolutely.
And they wound up there.
We know that because we were.
I remember Geraldo Rivera coming into Building 21, which was young girls. And so the building was painted better. It smelled better than most of the other buildings. The staff brought in curtains. It looked different. Geraldo walked in and he said, I don't have anything to film here. And he walked out. So I was furious with him. Yeah. And whenever I would see him,
that's what he said. He didn't want to see anything good.
But, Al, when I grew up, 40 years later, I thought back about it and I said, he couldn't show that. He couldn't show the chorus.
He was making a point. He was right.
He needed to say to people, because what did it matter what the best of it was? Because the worst of it. He had to show the worst of it.
I actually totally agree with you, but I didn't then.
Oh, I was so angry.
And when I wrote that story, I wrote it, and I mentioned the fact that, because Tommy Noonan went over to him and said, I know you're doing this story. We all work here, and we're proud of the work we do. And there's this guy, Al Lambert. He has this chorus that, and he said it's a down day. But he was at the Hilton when we used to do the Benevolence Society. And there were 3,500 people in the audience, and I had the chorus on the stage. And Roger Mudd and Geraldo and all those big...
John Johnson
was after Geraldo.
In front of on the dais. And I bring the chorus out with caps and gowns, and Carolyn Decker, I don't know if you remember her.
I do.
Carolyn singing the solo of the Carpenters, long ago and oh so far away. And the chorus is going, baby, in perfect harmony.
I fell in love with you.
And what's his name? Roger Mudd goes like this to Geraldo. He goes, what's this?
Yeah.
I remember like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
So I was very upset with him at the time.
Yeah,
I just had to say that.
My mom called me at one point, and she said, I just watched this thing on TV, and it says there are no therapies, there's no recreation. You told me you worked there. I said, Mom, I do work there, but I said, it's that there's so few of us comparative to the number of people living here. You think about it. Take the number. You had 6,000 people living there. 6,000. I think at the height, there were 2,500 staff. Take out the administration and the people that work Monday to Friday, teachers, recreation, whatever. Take them out. I think you'd have 1,500 left. Now, divide that 1,500 people across 7 days and 3 shifts. How many do you have there with 6,000 people? Probably 600.
No, it was like a 1 to 50 ratio instead, 1 to 25 ratio, and that was outrageous.
So you go to Building 19, you go to Building 19, and it talks about institutionalization and what it was like for the people who lived there and the lack of privacy. And, I tell the story out about, I have a little Down syndrome girl I'm working with, and she's limping. And I'm saying to her, what's the matter? I think she has a stone issue. So I'm working with a group of kids, and I say, everybody sit down. Come here. No. Come over here. I'm going to look in your shoe. No. I said, I'm telling you, when nobody's walking any further until I can get into your shoe. So she's mad. She's giving me one of these and everything.
Yeah, right.
I take off her shoe. No, it's mine. I said, I'm not going to take your shoe. I'm going to put it over here. I'm going to take off your sock. No. I take off the sock. And there's this little thing welled up because I'm thinking she has a stone or something, but it looks like, I don't know, paper mache. I'm not sure what it is. I put it on his side. I open it up. I start opening it. I open. It's a card from her mother.
Good.
Where else would she put it? Where else would she keep it? I mean, those are the stories.
Yeah,
Why?
that's amazing.
What is my passion for the mile? What is my passion to say this should not ever happen again?
Never happened.
These
Should
are
never
people who
happen
just
again.
needed some assistance. These weren't not criminals. They're just people who needed some help. And we all,
right.
by the way, have special needs. In case anyone hasn't
No,
noticed
sure.
in their own
there
lives.
wouldn't be universal design.
Right.
No, you're right. We all have
Yeah.
special needs.
So then there's the station by the college library, which has an archives in it that already has quite a bit of documentation in it. That will actually have a station that. Well, I'll go back to the stations, and then you go to Institute of Basic Research. You go up by Building 27, which is by the back gate,
Yeah,
and that's
the three,
still in its
29,
original
27,
format.
and 25. I
That's
think.
right.
Yeah.
Then you come around.
Hey.
Very good.
27 is now an IBR building though,
Yeah.
where they do some research.
You go to IBR, and then you end up, the last station is the Elizabeth Connolly Resource Center, because if there was one person who really was the main advocate, who really put herself out there, it was Betty Connolly.
Yeah,
and she
I agree
really,
with that,
you know, for those people who don't know, she was an assemblywoman here on Staten Island who just, when people were saying, no, not in my neighborhood, no,
She had a heart in it.
She had an
went to
office
those
on the grounds of Willowbrook.
She put her
which was
office on the
really,
grounds there.
an
She said
important
these
step.
people have a
Heart in
right
it.
to be in the community. They never should have been segregated. So, so there's something
I like
there for
Betty.
her.
She was very
She was a great woman. So there's 10 stations. The stations have you know, I hope at some point they'll be able to put something in so that you can see it. And there's a like a pylon that denotes it, whatever station is, and then there's a sign that's accessible that you can read about that particular station. Then there's a barcode on it, and then you can access the website, and it will tell you. And we hope eventually to have voiceovers over there talking about it. Bernard Carabello is going to do a voiceover at
he's-
Building 19 to talk about his life there.
Right.
You and Jackie and
Yeah.
Tommy and all the other
Right,
people
can
that
be
work
on
there,
that.
Richie,
Yeah.
to be on there talking about what their experiences were like, so that it doesn't reoccur. Betty Connolly, one last thing.
go.
This is my spiel.
I want you to
Betty,
go.
Betty Connolly
It's
said
important.
one
Yeah.
thing that was always so true. She said, we're always just a few budget cuts away from Willowbrook.
Yeah.
And she's right.
And she's absolutely right.
You have a good concept, you want to do this, but then when you abandon it, bad things happen.
I'm not going to mention any names, but I belong to lots of organizations. There was one I belonged to that a lot of money was raised. And I always tell them, don't keep too much of this money. Give a lot of it away, because we all worked hard for it and we raised it for the community. Because 20 years from now, new people come in, and that money could be thrown in the sewer.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
could misappropriate it.
Yes.
It's the same thing with what you're talking about. 20 years from now, someone new comes in and says, you know, this whole idea of not having institutions anymore, I don't think it's good. I'm going to give you the top 10 reasons why. And like you just said, it changes in a
Yeah.
heartbeat.
Yeah.
So you have to, people, the further away they are from something, the less they realize.
So you
the-
gotta
how
leave it-
bad-
leave it
you
fresh
have
to them.
leave it fresh to them. So
Yeah, I was at a
just wanted
meeting
to mention that.
5 years ago, Al. I'm sitting at a meeting, and someone says, in all honesty, and as a person who was, you know, pretty high administratively, says, you know, transportation isn't that important. And if people received their services where they lived, we wouldn't have to spend that money on transportation. So I said, yeah, but the next point is then we'll put them all living together, and then they all stay there. I said, does this smack of anything to you?
Right,
I mean,
yeah,
think about
there you
what
go.
you're saying.
The whole idea was
Well,
to
and-
put them into group homes, and where they had bowling and a car and access to this and fun, living like normal people would, right?
Community
Absolutely.
In a group. I'm not
inclusiveness
talking about a
and-
group home with 100 people. I'm talking small groups, 10, 12, whatever it is.
Not even that. They're
Not
smaller
even.
than that
They're
now.
even smaller
Yeah.
than
Well,
that.
yes,
So they're
the
having
smaller the better.
Yeah, the smaller the better. I mean, I
Absolutely.
grew up with 12 people in my house
Yeah,
when
that's
I was
true.
a kid, you know, and 100
a
every
few.
week just for dinner.
Yeah.
But that was different.
Yeah.
But, you know, so
But
Yes,
I
I
want to
agree.
mention, too, about what is happening now. It's been now a few years since development has slowed.
For residential development.
Yeah, residential development. And, you know, I mean, this is a legislative thing that we push all the time.
Not getting new group homes.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Any type, even if it's like funding apartments, funding the development of group homes, the construction of new group homes. Just,
Not the
in
same for
general,
us,
getting affordable housing for people with developmental disabilities that might be, want to be more independent. It's
slowing
a problem
down.
now.
Well,
It has
it was
slowed
very
immensely.
fast too because Staten Island became a hotbed for not-for-profits that do help them because of the fact that Willowbrook was here.
Sure.
So that accelerated a lot.
Sure,
Now
they
you don't have it.
deinstitutionalized.
It was a feeder.
Yes.
It was
Yeah.
a feeder. Just want to go right back to. We're going to just keep talking. I think we may wind up doing the whole hour because we only got 5 minutes left and we didn't even broach the subject.
Of the,
So what I want to
get
say is
together.
that you mentioned something about the terminology, and what they called
mental
the
defectives was
condition.
used, yeah.
the word idiot, moron, and imbecile.
Imbecile.
When I went to teach there, in those days, you didn't have to have a special ed. I got my special ed credits later. I had a sociology degree. I went for my master's in ed, and then eventually for the special ed.
Right.
I was already out of teaching by the time I got it.
Yeah.
I was gone, but I figured I was already started. I might as well do it. But when I went to teach and I saw the word imbecile, and then they had a definition of what an imbecile was. Did you know that?
And yeah, of course.
In the Stanford
I
Binet,
did.
those were the terms used in the Stanford
And
Binet.
I said to myself,
in the psychological
But
test.
you use it as derogatory
what happened
terms
was
on the street.
The people on the outside, remember the kids would say, "Do I have to eat state food?" They knew the difference between a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on the grounds than one outside. So the people on the outside started saying, "Oh, this guy's retarded," or "This guy's an imbecile." They started using those terms.
that's
It
what I
wasn't
mean,
the
yeah.
people in the place. It was sadly, okay, I'm not blaming everyone in the general public, but it came from that sector that they started using it to say, "You're an idiot. You're an imbecile." So
Right.
when I tell that to people today, they go, "Really?"
Those are psychological terms. They
Those
were
are
used-
psychological terms. Thank God we
Yeah.
got rid of that for the
Yeah.
most part.
Well, even now, mental retardation was used up until
Right.
a year or two ago.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, more than that.
Yeah,
but,
more than that,
But
yeah.
I mean, they actually made a law.
They made a law to
saying
change it to
To
that we
change it
couldn't
and not use it
them,
anymore, even though it
Thank
meant
goodness.
slower.
Yeah.
And
But no, it's intellectual disability. But
Right.
something really
became
nice happened
derogatory. Go
in
ahead.
Saudi Arabia because now they changed it. They made a law to call people, instead of people with intellectual disabilities, people with determination. I think that's
that
fabulous.
is great. That is very
So
good.
I think that's great. So
That's a good one.
we still have to move forward. And even when we use certain language, we say it has to be person-first language. Like you were saying, Down syndrome girl, we would say,
A girl with
person
Down
who has
syndrome.
Down syndrome.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
There you go.
With
Right,
Down
that's the
syndrome,
word.
kind of thing.
So
Not trying
go
to-
ahead. You're in.
Not trying to
You
correct
were
you, but
going
we
along.
do. The news media is the worst.
Yeah, they butcher it up.
Wheelchair bound and suffering from.
Yeah, that's true.
And I know we're going off on a little
No,
tangent,
that's
but
okay.
this
I mean,
stuff
Okay,
is
we're
very
talking
important.
about it. This is
Yeah.
all important.
Yeah. So, I mean, and all of this is really the texture that we want to give people. That's what the mile is about, to really give people this historical perspective of how this has come about and why it can't go back this way.
Right.
We
It's
have
very
to
important.
stop that. So, in doing this, along the mile, there are these 10 stations, specifically on the mile. The college is they're replacing all of their benches, and they're setting up commemorative benches throughout the campus. But for those benches there's 2 benches at each of the stations, those 20 benches along those milestones, we call them, this is an opportunity to have a commemorative bench, right? So we were thinking that, certainly the Staten Island Developmental Disabilities Council is taking a bench there. But the other group that I'm a member of as well is the former and present employees of Willowbrook. And just like you said,
Yeah,
the percentage of people that worked there that were bad, they were there. We all know that.
we know it.
But there were so many of us that were there
Oh, God.
that every day brought the outside in. We tried as best we could, whatever skills we had.
I was proud of what I did there.
I was too. I never, when someone said I worked at Willowbrook, there are many people who say I don't want to talk about it, and I'm ashamed of being there. I never felt that ever.
Felt good about myself every day.
Yeah, I felt the same, and I felt that I bonded to some degree with the people who lived there. Right?
Oh yeah, me too.
And I was, I started a lot of programs in there. I brought horses onto the grounds. Mike Elgano was in charge of the transportation.
Mike,
I hope
Mike.
he sees this, Mike,
hope
because
he's
I want to
watching.
see him again.
I love Mike. Oh.
Mike, I said to Mike, I want to take the kids to the zoo, and he said, I can't give you a vehicle to take. He said, the only one I have is this one here, but it has no reverse. He said, don't parallel park any place. He said, it's safe. Everything is good, except you can't back up.
Oh, that's great.
But he said, oh, we'll do this. And Mike used to he used to drive, before he was in charge, he was a driver.
Right.
And he used to drive us with the trips with
I used to go on all
with
the
the
trips
Benevolent
with him.
Society,
Yeah.
with Mrs.
All the trips.
Bosky.
Great.
Oh my God.
With Mrs.
We had some
Bosky and the
great
Benevolent
trips.
Society, we would go out to
over.
Flatbush, to Garfield's cafeteria, and
Sheepshead
see a
Bay.
movie.
I took the chorus. Remember where you are, because you're
Okay.
the one that's keeping this all in. Mrs. Glasser was very good to me with that chorus, because she knew that when
And
She
Mrs.
was the
Glasser was
education
the
director.
education director.
Correct. And I should have mentioned that. Terrific, thank you. And she was very good to me, because she loved what happened with this.
Yeah.
And she would always bring the people from Albany. She'd go, Mr. Lambert, at 2 o'clock I'm bringing. And I was always ready. I had the chorus ready. And we would sing, and all these big deals from Albany would go, God, they couldn't believe it. She loved
Good.
it.
Yeah.
So she got me the money for the caps and gowns, and I took the kids on a trip to sing in the city, and then she gave me money to take them to Luchow's on 14th Street.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I got 55
All right.
kids and 20 assistant teachers in Luchow's. And the place is packed. It was big then. Everybody's eating.
Yeah.
So at the end, and a lot of people were looking, and they said the kids were well behaved and all. So I said to the kids before we leave, I said, do you want to sing a song for the people in here? They didn't have to get up.
What a great idea.
So now I got all these kids in Luchow's, and the place had another 150 people, and all the waiters and waitresses were being kind. And the kids, we break out into the counterpoint version of Let There Be Peace.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Wow.
perfect.
Well, the place goes
It's wild,
nuts. The people standing, they're clapping. The waiters and waitresses are crying. They're all coming over. They're hugging everybody. They're bringing the kids ice cream. It was like an amazing moment in
It's a
time.
moment. It's a moment.
Little stuff like that. You know?
Yeah.
I loved every.
Those are the things that need to be in the
Yeah.
oral history too.
I think so.
really.
You know.
Well, we just put it in today, but
Sure
you're
did.
right though. Those are the things, you know. And I hated leaving because I knew that no one would ever care about that group as I did. I didn't see the end of Willowbrook at that time.
Yeah.
I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
And I just said, I'm leaving this, and I have to live my life. I was working 3 jobs,
Sure.
selling cars, teaching during the day, selling cars at night 6 days a week, and then singing 5 nights
Yeah.
a week.
Yeah.
120 hours a week I was working.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to you.
No sleeping.
So,
Back to you, Chet.
but so in this, so we have this opportunity then to set up a commemorative bench from the employees, and and the other opportunity there, of course, is to start to do some oral history. Because we're this endangered species. We
Right.
remember this. And I think we have, our job now is to leave for the future that history.
You're right.
That moment in history.
so right. It's unbelievable.
And so we want to record people. Tell us your story. Tell us what happened. Tell us what you remember about it. I mean, I always tell the story of my first day at work, Al. And I forgot to bring my key with me because I kept my key.
Oh, I had it
My
for so
steel key.
long, that key. Oh, I don't have it anymore.
And, you know, it's a thick key around this big.
Yeah, I remember
And
Brass.
first day of work, I go into work, and as I said, I'd never worked with anyone with a disability. Never knew anyone with a disability. And I'm all excited. My first day, I walk up to the building. I put this key in. I open this steel door. I don't think much about it. I go up a couple of steps. I open another door. I go up another step into a foyer. I open another door. And now I'm saying to myself, I'm 19 years old. I'm saying,
Is this a prison?
I just opened 3 steel doors.
I know.
You know?
Where am I?
And I said, I'm so-and-so. They said, go down the end of that hall. That's where you're going to work. I said, okay. I walk down this hall. It's very drab. It's monochromatic.
Right.
It's cold. It's, I don't know, it felt,
remember.
it was kind of dismal, I think. And I get to this another steel door, and it has like a mesh wire in it. And I'm putting the key in, and I suddenly say to myself, who needs to be locked behind 4 steel doors? Who's on the other side of this door?
I know.
And I just say, well, I'm here. I turn the key and I walk in, and on the other side are 40 toddlers. That moment in time has never left me.
Yeah, you never forget
I looked
that.
around and thought to myself, what is going on here? Why are these kids locked behind 4
Right.
steel doors?
Gee, I know.
So that feeling, that story, you tell your story all the time. You just want to keep it there. Willowbrook Mile is the way for the story to be told over and over
I know.
again. And I think it's so important
agree with you 1,000%.
to do the bench, to do it from all of us that work
Right.
there, that it was really important to us to be there,
Yeah.
and to help and to commemorate the people that we worked with, who had tremendous spirit to have survived
my
that
God, right.
really brutal existence there.
I'm also very proud of like you and Richie and all the ones that left Willowbrook.
And you.
Not
And
me.
you.
And Gene Spatz, who was also
Yes.
at
Yeah,
Willowbrook,
well,
and then he opened
Gene
up on your
Spatz
mark.
opened On Your Mark.
Yeah.
Richie Salinati opened Lifestyles for the
you guys
Disabled.
there.
Jen and I opened The Very
Jackie
Special
now
Place.
working in the field.
Jackie
Well,
Well, I
stayed
worked
working in the
for
field.
United Cerebral Palsy of New York
There you
State,
go.
who was very
Was involved,
instrumental
yeah.
in the deinstitutionalization process.
Absolutely.
They took over the 7 buildings at Willowbrook, and we, along with a few other people, made the jump to work there because we saw hope
Right.
in working
Right.
for them.
And you made it your life. And,
Yeah.
you need people like that to care about it, Yeah, there are certain people that used to put down not-for-profits. And I say, listen to me. There are people out there that are doing things, making a living. And something, not everything they're doing is good, and a lot of it is bad. These other groups, they're doing a lot of good. They're allowed to get paid. They're spending their time doing good, and you're getting mad they shouldn't be paid. Get out of here. They don't get it.
No, they honestly
They
don't.
We're
just
doing a job,
don't get it. You're doing a job
for people that
Right.
need to be taken care
Absolutely.
of, and
have to be taken care of.
people have to understand
And-
that.
Right, and you have to live your life. But certain people,
Right.
and I was the biggest
They're
defender of
concerned
it.
about the Medicaid dollars because
Yeah, I
much
get
of the
it.
funding is Medicaid, and people misunderstand. They think Medicaid is just,
Right.
put for
Health
different
right.
different things,
Right.
and it is a main source of
Yes,
funding,
I get
and
it.
People with
it's for
disability.
people who need it from birth to death.
Right, cradle
So,
to grave.
yes.
So this is all
So-
good. This is really good. Go continue on the mile, and then we've got to talk about the focus for
Well,
that event.
let's talk about the event.
Let's talk about the event.
Yeah,
All right. I'll give a little bit, and then you.
We formed a committee, Al.
We formed the committee.
And what
I
does
was
that committee mean,
The word
Al?
means when you join a committee. I'm telling you this stat line.
This is a very
People
educational
do not
show.
get the fact that the word committee has the word commit in it, and some people want to be on a committee and they don't want to do anything.
Well, what does
That's not
ad
the way
hoc
it works.
mean?
Ad hoc, I don't know, but it's close to what I want to say. So, and I always say, when you are on a committee, you commit to do what the work is. A lessee leases a car. A committee works on the committee.
Thank you.
So
Al.
we have a committee,
Yes.
and the committee is trying to raise the money for the bench. And we figured we would do it around an event. And the event that we've chosen, which is on September 29th, Sunday afternoon, at the Flagship Brewery. Is that Minturn Street? I think it's
In Tompkinsville.
in Tompkinsville. It's the old Aunt Julie Buick building.
That's right.
It's in the down the. I only worked for Sam and Julie for about 6 or 8 weeks after I left Toyota,
That car thing.
and that car thing. But that was the service department at that time
right
down
down
there.
low level.
And anyway, P.S. That all being said, the Flagship Brewery is doing the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're working on the price, but if you can call, if you have to call to get information about this event. We are now inviting anyone who worked at Willowbrook at any particular point, and those including now,
Right.
to come to this event. There will be food, and you'll be able to buy the beer made at Flagship, their beer, and we're going to do a wine thing. We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
And so food and wine, and not very expensive, and we'll use whatever money we make there to contribute to this bench.
Right.
Okay, and I think we can do it on
Food,
that
wine,
day.
And not only that,
and
and let me,
friends.
yeah,
Right, food, wine, fun, and friends.
yeah, and it's basically saying, it's a get together with a purpose and a beer.
Yeah.
Right?
That's it. Purpose and a beer.
Yeah, and the thing is that
So
the
it'll
other
be a
thing we're
Willowbrook
going to do,
reunion,
it's a
really.
Willowbrook reunion,
yeah.
And
but
we're-
also we're going to do this. I promise that we're going to do this thing where we're going to tape people, videograph people,
Right.
to tell a little bit of their story so that
Right.
it is preserved.
Right. And I'm going to be breaking Joey G's onions because he's a cousin of mine,
Yeah.
and see if he can help us out.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the people from CTV if they have the time. So we try to get this where we do a videograph of it.
Yeah,
you know?
and people that, CTV has just been a fantastic
it's
sponsor.
terrific. So glad we
did
have this here.
Unbelievable.
And,
People
edited
don't understand how
Willowbrook
blessed we are to
Revisited
have it.
series.
Oh
The
my God,
Willowbrook-
they don't get
Phenomenal.
it. They
The
don't get it.
Willowbrook Revisited series, which was done by Rosemarie Rendazzo Furno, is just a fantastic series. It got better and better every show.
Yeah, that's great.
And we met with some of the plaintiffs, Murray Schneps from the Willowbrook Review panel,
remember
Diana
that. He's passed
McCourt. Murray has since passed, but we got an hour show with Murray talking about
great.
the experience. And Willa Mae Goodman, Bernard Carabello was here.
Willa Mae.
Yeah, Doctor
Willa Mae still alive?
Willa Mae Goodman.
yeah, sure.
Yes.
How old would she? I mean, I don't want
She's,
to
I imagine she's in the late 80s.
in the late 80s. Yeah, I love
And
that.
then
She's, like the president of the Gouverneur
Yeah,
oh, I
Society,
remember.
which
Bernard
was,
Carabello and Mike Wilkins did the show.
Wow.
And all because of CTV.
Right.
And so we were able to get the word out there. That's how we heard from the POWs because of the CTV and the impact that it's having, the ripples.
Right.
I mean, it's fantastic.
No, it's so darn important.
Thank you so
to do
much
it.
for letting us sit here and
Are you kidding?
the Al Lambert show.
Yeah, the Al Lambert show. But again, trying to make this show have a purpose.
I'm so happy. It's something to watch at 3 o'clock in the
Yeah, I
morning.
know. Well, I get calls, and I guess Rosemary, what do you call Richie Nicotra at the Hilton? He calls me. Every time he sees a show that he likes them all. He always says it, but he sees a show. And one day he calls me at 8:30 in the morning. And I'm just getting up. I'm going to go in my shower. And I see on the phone. So I pick him up. What's going on? He says, I got to tell you. He goes, my wife and I were sitting on the bed last night crying.
Oh.
I was doing some of the Sinatra stuff and some of the tunes, and I was doing In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning. And him and his wife said,
I never really listened to it.
They liked it. And then they listened to a couple other songs. He said they started to cry. They were going, because I used to babysit for Richie. He says,
Oh my gosh.
not babysit when he was a young child, but when I worked at Penny's before I worked at Willowbrook, his mother would shop at Penny's. And she'd say, oh, Al, I used to be out in the barbecues from April to July out in the front by Willowbrook, in that shopping center on Forest Avenue
Forest
where
Ave.
Penny's used to be.
Right,
yes.
yeah.
And we used to have barbecues and chase. She'd go, would you watch Richard while I shop? I'd say, yes, Mrs. Nicotra. And then she'd go inside and he'd start jumping on the chase lounges up in the barbecues. One day he goes into my register.
Oh my God.
He was like a Cats and Jammer kid. Only the older people would know that,
Yeah.
And he opens the register. He wasn't going to steal. He having fun. He was just playing with the register. I jumped over because the boss was standing over there. Jumped over,
Hence you came to Willowbrook to work.
It's like
Either that
Willowbrook.
or went to
Anyway,
sell cars.
So that's how we go back.
Because J.P. Penney's like, get this guy out of here. He's got kids with their hands in the register.
So the show has over the years, and I thank Ro and Ed all the time. The show has people do watch this show.
Absolutely.
Not only this show, they watch Staten Island, CTV. They watch it.
they watch it.
And I'm always flipping through it. I don't lie. I tell everybody I live in Jersey, but I spend 90% of my waking hours on Staten Island. This is my home. My two businesses are here. Family and my heritage. And
Yeah, plus you're such a well-known fixture.
I'm a Staten Island guy.
You're a celeb.
I'm not
Yes,
a celeb,
you
but I'm
are.
close.
Come on.
Somebody said I have regional success. I like it. Very regional. Mariners Harbor, Port Richmond, and New York. But
Well, I brought your name to Rosebank.
oh yeah, Rosa Banker.
Roosevelt.
But so the CTV thing works. You said it before. How lucky we are. There are other cable stations like in Jersey. They don't have this access. They don't have it. All they put on is the bulletins.
Right.
Yeah.
The Bronx, what is that?
Well, Manhattan used to have it.
Channel-
I don't know. I have to
I
ask
don't know
Ro.
what that is,
Yeah.
but there's one in the Bronx that's very good.
And Manhattan-
The same thing. It's very, neighborhood oriented,
Right,
and
right.
it
And
brings
we are-
out a lot of good things about what's
We
going
are
on that you
blessed
would never hear
to
anywhere
have
else.
it.
So.
So before we
That's
go, we
about
still
it,
have
but
a
this
few
is
more
great.
minutes. I was gonna
Yeah.
do some, but Ro can throw a song in. I won't do the other thing tomorrow. But I want to talk. What is going on right now at a very special place? In a little bit, we'll take 3 minutes
Yeah,
each.
just-
What's going on in your organization that you would like to?
Well,
talk a little bit
our
about?
organization, as you said before, is New York State Institute on Disability.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually founded, I'd say at least 25 years ago, by Elizabeth Sunshine, who is a parent. She's also a very well-known Staten
Yeah.
Islander who's
Yeah,
been, she has done.
That's her
you know,
name, Elizabeth Sunshine.
Yeah, isn't that a great name?
I've never. I
Yeah.
can't believe I haven't heard of it.
Liz Sunshine, yeah.
Okay, that's a beautiful name.
Yes.
Good God.
It is.
So go ahead.
Yeah, and she's a beautiful person in that
I'm sure she is,
really has done so many things. She's involved in many things over the years on Staten Island and beyond, in New York City. But her mission, and we continue to do this, we continue to, serve people with developmental disabilities in a little bit different way than a lot of the other organizations. They provide services, that are, either residential or
Right.
rehabilitation, respite and community habilitation and that kind of thing. But what we do is really for the families, okay? And we do not have programs, so to speak, but what we do is we provide family reimbursement. So if there's a family member that has a developmental disability, and actually, I should say, because it's important, everyone has to be eligible for OPWDD services, which is the state office of
Right.
people with developmental disabilities. Everybody has to be eligible for that, so people just can't come along and get
Right,
the
no, I
service
get it.
without.
Right, you have
we
to
have to
follow
say
the-
that only
there are
because it's
parameters.
important.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And, but part of what
Access
they do
parameters,
is to
right.
help people to make their way through the maze.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes,
To get
we
that
do.
funding.
You
They
know,
are a
we
wonderful
provide-
organization.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you're filling a need. It's
Yes, we
just-
provide
yeah.
evaluations for people in the home, for people who don't have Medicaid, and so, it's difficult. So, once you have Medicaid, you go to evaluate the person, you can maybe go to a clinic or that kind of thing,
Right.
but, it's difficult if you don't. So we do that, but the mission is for family,
Families of.
inclusivity,
I gotcha.
that the family stays intact and does something together. So what we do is we provide tickets for all different entertainment venues, for sporting events, but we don't provide one ticket. Or we don't just say, okay, the group of people with a disability come together here and, go on the bus and go. No, we give the tickets to the family. We give 4 or 5 tickets.
Right.
We even provide transportation, nice transportation,
So they
like
can go
a
like human beings.
SUV or
Right,
whatever, and
right.
family can go to the Barclay Center, or they can go to
Right.
Madison
How
Square
wonderful
Garden,
is
or
that?
we even get tickets to the New Victory Theater, Wax Museum,
great.
all sorts of things.
Isn't that great?
And the family goes together.
Yeah.
And
Family
it's something,
event.
it's an expense that,
They would never be able to do.
Never be able to do it.
Right,
It's so
yeah.
expensive to get tickets, even for a ball game.
My Rotary Club does the prom every year for Hungerford
Hungerford.
School.
Oh,
yeah,
It's
that's
doing it
great.
for 20 years, and what they do to that event, we get limousines.
Right, with the limos, yeah, so
my
it's
God.
wonderful.
How cool is that?
And they love it. I've only participated a few times, because I always tell them, look, I do other things, and I've done that, you know what I'm saying? But
Right.
my club is very, very, very into doing that event.
Yeah, the service
I've
well,
raised
what
money
she's on
for
the
it, of
island,
course. but-
fantastic.
Yes, well, what we do too, which is a very important piece, is family reimbursement, which
Right.
AVSP does also.
Right, yeah.
It's when people have to buy certain goods that are necessary,
Right.
and it causes a financial hardship
Right.
to do it, we are able to provide reimbursement for that.
Right.
So that's a major, thing. So
I got 2 minutes.
Yeah, sorry.
So, no,
I could
sorry,
go on
no,
and on and
I-
on.
no,
I
I'm
wanted to
glad.
give that plug
I thought
to
I didn't
Elizabeth
think
Sunshine because she started.
I'm
it
so
all.
glad you did that because I
Yeah.
don't know. You got to tell me about her. I got to meet her.
Sure, absolutely.
Gotta do
Yes,
that.
of course.
So give me a minute on very special
Very special place, provides services here on Staten Island and in Manhattan and in Brooklyn a little bit in terms of care management. But we have 1,200 individuals that receive services. We
Isn't that
have
wonderful?
over 400 staff that
God,
work
it's
here on the
amazing.
island.
Great.
We have all types of
The
services.
restaurant on New Dorp Lane.
We have Harvest Cafe on
Yeah.
New Dorp Lane.
I've been
It's
there to
a
eat.
great,
Yes,
great,
it's
best
terrific.
rib
Yeah.
cakes on the
Great.
island.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Where people are learning to wait tables or do food prep.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
So it's
Beautiful
it's-
location. I
Yeah,
like it.
we have we have a lot of programs. We have senior citizens programs, programs for children. We do programs in people's homes. We're part of the self-direction movement, so we do reimbursement for families.
Many times on our show, 4 or 5 times, I've done segments on Father Capodanno. And the 3rd feature movie is coming out. And it's coming out hopefully in about, I guess, mid-August. And it's going to be a feature movie at the Monmouth Film Festival,
Wow.
which is in Red Bank.
Yes.
Found out that a friend of mine, his son runs this, and never really realized that my friend's son did run this, and we perchance met in Panera, and he didn't know Father Capodanno anything about Father Vincent. And I told him who he was and what he did. And for those of you who don't know, he born and raised in Mariners Harbor, was a Maryknoll priest, and then volunteered for Vietnam, became a chaplain, Army/Marine chaplain, and sadly got killed on the battlefield. And he got killed giving last rites to soldiers, but he had been on the battlefield 40 times that way. Getting killed was never in his world. He just felt God was his protector. And P.S., now he's on the path to sainthood, and it's a very long path. And believe it or not, you have to raise money for it, like anything else. And there is the cause for the canonization of Father Vincent Capodanno, located in Washington, D.C. In the huge church there, the Church of the Immaculate Conception is the equivalent to the National Cathedral, which is a Protestant church. But the Church of the Immaculate Conception is the seat of, let's say, the Catholics in America. And in that church, there's a Father Capodanno museum room
Oh, really?
with all things about him. And that's where the cause for the canonization, there's an office in there, is located. So the movies, the first one was done many years ago, about 15 years ago, The Grunt Padre by Father Mode. Contact the Monmouth Film Festival. All you got to do is Google it, and people can actually call, and they can find out when the movie is being shown. Right now, it's 99% that it'll be shown on August 11th, but we're waiting for the time slot. So I'm, in case my show doesn't appear in August, because sometimes in summer it's hard, I wanted to get this out. So forgive me. I know I invited you.
No, but you've been very instrumental in pushing this forward for all these years.
I have tried to do what I could do, because I have obviously, he was my cousin, but we spent a lot of time together. He was older than me.
Yeah.
He would have been 88. I'm 72, whatever the heck I am. I even don't want to count anymore. Don't tell anybody. But we spent a lot of time together because my dad and he were very close. And every time he came home, he was with me, and I used to take him to chaplain school. And so got to know the man.
So he was a young man in his 20s, right, during the Vietnam War?
Yes,
Is
he
that
got
what-
killed at 38. He was actually,
right?
so
Oh,
he was
later.
there for a year and a half.
Wow.
So
That's true, because he went back as a chaplain.
he went
He's not
back as a
necessarily
chaplain.
soldier.
He spent 6 years in
Right.
Taiwan, or 7 years in Taiwan as a
Wow.
Maryknoll. Anyway, P.S., so August 11th.
It's a great project.
Yes, it is a great project. Proud to be part of it.
As Father was finishing his blessing of Ray Harton, he heard the cry for help from Corpsman Leal and rushed to help him. He placed his body as a shield for Leal and immediately received the full blast from the nearby Viet machine gun. He died instantly with 27 bullets in his body.
The thing that got him was apparently he was moving towards a number of wounded Marines, and in their midst was a Navy corpsman named Leal. Leal was ministering to them, And so he was heading in their direction, and out of the corner of his eye, he saw a North Vietnamese soldier setting up his machine gun to fire at them. And this motivated him, it really propelled him towards these wounded troops, and he threw his body over them. Now, there are different stories as whether he was praying with them or whatever, but he deliberately blocked the vision of the NVA machine gunner. This man deliberately shielded these troops and gave his life for their sake, emulating the person of Jesus.
The next day, one of my duties as S2 was to gather the intelligence, and I was to go out. I had to go out and go through the bodies, go through the remains, the North Vietnamese remains, and it was quite unusual because in almost every instance, they never left their dead there. They always took their dead with them or buried their dead. In this case, the battle was so intense during the night that when they pulled back, they just left their dead. And it was, it was going out and having to do that. And then when I'd finished gathering all the, looking at you can look at their uniforms and find the nomenclature, what outfit they're with, so that we could send that back to battalion and division to identify exactly what the division was that we were engaged with. So I was looking for Father, and I asked where he was, and the fellow said he's over there, and I said I can't find him. Where is he? And he said he's over there. And when I asked him the third time, then he told me that he was dead, and I could see his arm out. He was under the poncho, and I saw his arm, and his left arm and his part of his arm was blown away. We had taken a lot of casualties, and we'd taken a lot of KIAs, but there was just a pall over the whole company because of Father being gone. It was like the heart and soul of the company was cut out.
But when we got word of his death, it was as if a shroud had covered that entire battalion, especially in context of what he did and the word that was passed about his heroism, but even more so, his emulation of Jesus. Mm-hmm. He sacrificed his life for someone else because he loved others. The first thing I noticed about him was his eyes. His eyes were deep, they were knowing, they were compassionate, they were sad. Those eyes had seen too much suffering. He carried the weight of the world in those eyes. If I were to picture the eyes of Jesus Christ, they would be Capodanno's eyes. It told everything about the man. Capodanno was essentially a saint. He lived the life of a saint and he died a saint. And he emulated the person of Jesus Christ as much as anyone I've ever known, perhaps more so. He truly believed in Jesus. He lived the basic tenets of Jesus. He loved everyone he met, irrespective of their religion, their race, or whatever. This man was an ambassador, a true ambassador, a living enactment of Jesus Christ. He was a saint, a living saint. He died a saint. And I would hope, I really would, he deserves this. He deserves to be beatified, and I think he needs to be seriously considered for sainthood.
I thought sainthood would be a step down for the guy. I just thought he was an angel. Mm-hmm. I truly believe that angels move amongst us.
Father Capodanno had the courage of a lion and the faith of a martyr.
Father Vincent's a saint. He gave his life trying to save a Marine, a corpsman actually, Corporal Leal, who was wounded. He ran over to try to help this guy, and he got hit 27 times. He lived the Christian life that he professed to everybody else, to the death. He loved us, to the death. I've never seen a greater act of Christian love than that. What more can you do than lay down your life for your friends? That's what he did.
And there are young kids who are now adults who are fathers and even grandfathers who still talk about this man. Mm-hmm. They're still talking about him. He made that much of an impact on their lives.
Father, which art in heaven.
Stay calm, Marine. There'll be someone here soon to help us. God is with us all here today.
Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is